רוצה לשבת בבקשה, באנגלית,
Yeah, Anglit. Okay, so for those of us joining online, you could find the mimer, the source sheets for the mimer was posted in the description of the video, a link to it online. So, like we discussed in the beginning of last mimer, the Rebbe's Chassidus is a Chassidus for our generation. It's a Chassidus for people living here. For people living in our times, people who are at our level, and it's an Aveda, it's both a Haskalah and an Aveda that has to do with our unique position innate in history. Our generation is unlike any other generation. There's only one generation that's the last generation of Golus and the first generation of Gola. And that's our generation. Until now.
Generation. Since Rebbe spoke about it, I mean, a lot of things have happened. And
it's a good,
it's a good. We go through that generation.
It's a good question. So, a generation in Yiddishkeit is defined as a leader. Each Jewish leader brings a new generation, and since the Rebbe is still the leader of our generation, so we're still in the Rebbe's generation. So, but it's a good question, and I certainly won't. It's something that we have to ask the Rebbe Ad Masai, how much. So, in last Maimer, for example, we learned that you have these very powerful ideas of ratzon, of will, where a person dedicates his entire will to the Eibishter and to the Eibishter alone. However, the Rebbe explained in the Maimer that even greater than that is that when this idea of dedicating our whole will to the Eibishter influences and impacts our day-to-day life, our actions, then we reach even higher than the idea itself. And that's something that you, if you don't think about it, you might miss it. So maybe it's worth it to spend a minute on that. What's greater? We all know, if we compare ourselves to the people in generations before us, there were people who literally felt a love for the Eibishter in their heart. More than the love that we feel to our children, they felt to the Eibishter. The Pasha woke up in the morning and they were alive with a vitality, with an energy, and a movement inside of a love to the Eibishter. And the same thing, a fear of the Eibishter. And this is not even so many generations ago, just a few generations ago. Now, living in our generation when we're in the Ikvisa de Meshicha, but not Stam, the Ikvisa de Meshicha, we find ourselves in a different situation. Not many people in our generation are capable of feeling love in our heart where the passion is alive, it's felt. In other words, you ask me, do I love the Eibishter? Of course I love the Eibishter. But is it alive in my heart? I don't think I've ever experienced that. It's a madrega that we hear about from Hasidim of generations before. So you would think that relegates us to a lesser than Aveda, a lesser than importance. We can't accomplish, we can't reach, we can't do more, or never mind as much as the people in the generations before us. And the Maimer B'Yem Ashtei Yom, the Rebbe explains that if you can connect to these ideas, that there is such a thing of giving your entire will to the Eibishter, and that when you give it to the Eibishter, it shouldn't be for any reward, and it shouldn't be to any levels in the Likus, it should be to the Eibishter himself for his sake alone. If you can connect to this idea, then even if you're a person who has many other wills, let's say many other wills, I want cake, and I want exercise, and I want a vacation, I want to enjoy my life. There's many things throughout the day. I wake up in the morning, I could give you a long list right away, right after my Dani, hopefully. Give you a long list of things that I want and I want to enjoy. Even the silly things, I'd rather have a nicer car than I have now. The simple things that we're full of them. The Rebbe says even a person who is full of ritzainus, and he says the ritzainus of the nefesh b'amis. These are the words of the Rebbe. Even such a person, if he can connect to this idea that really what's important, what's the main thing? This ratzon, this dedication to the Eibishter, and therefore all of his other ritzainus, he says, okay, I'll have them. I'll have my cake. And I wake up in the morning, if I don't have a piece of cake, I feel like something is missing. I'll have a piece of cake. But to me, cake isn't the ikar in life. If I want to make a barbecue, I'm going to make a barbecue and I'm going to invite friends. I'm going to make good meat. But the meat is not going to be, that's not what's important to me. It's simply a ratzon that I have. It's something that I do. It's muter al pitera. It's healthy. emotionally for me. And since I'm not on the Madrega of Chvesos or Motel or Docker, so I'll do a barbecue to help myself. It's a recreational activity, but I know it's not important. This is not me. I don't define myself. I can make the best barbecue. When I make a barbecue, you should see, and I don't live for it the whole week. It's something I do. Why am I making the barbecue? Because if I do that, then first of all, I get to sit with a bunch of my friends. Yidden coming together is a tremendous thing. Second of all, we make brachas. This cow that we're eating, you know how much energy went into the tractors, the production of the tractors, and the fertilizer, and the fuel that was used, and the water that was used to grow it. So much went into it. And now we're eating it. We make a bracha on it. When I make a bracha on it, I'm connected to this idea. Oh, this bracha, even though I don't feel it in my heart. I don't feel it in my heart. I know I don't. But I know this idea that they have explained to me, that what's important is being absolutely dedicated to the Eibush. And I make the bracha and I say, you know what? That's why I'm doing it. And a bracha achreina. And then I'm in a good mood. And I could go to sleep peacefully and I could wake up peacefully and I could serve the Eibush in so many different ways. So we have over here, these ideas are influencing and impacting our day-to-day life. That actually achieves much more than just the Madrega itself. Just the Madrega itself. Just being full of a love and a fear of the Eibishter and a ratzon that's dedicated only to the Eibishter does not achieve as much as the actions in the day-to-day life. Like they have explained in the Maimer, because that dafka draws down from Pnimius HaRatzon. You could call it Atzmus if you want. That dafka when you do, in Machshava Dibur HaMaisa, you do what the Eibishter wants, that dafka draws down the Eibishter himself and will bring Mashiach. This is a very powerful idea. It's something that instead of looking at ourselves as valueless, in other words, it's not just about dry Kabbalah soil. Kabbalah soil is Reishis Haveda V'Yikar V'Shar. So if somebody doesn't have Kabbalah soil, he's not really serving the Eibishter, and everything he does is probably looking for himself. You must have Kabbalah soil. But only Kabbalah soil? We're relegated to living only at the Madrega of Kabbalah soil? A dry Kabbalah soil? Says the Rebbe, no. You could find a happiness, you could find a beauty, you could find an importance, an achievement, an accomplishment, a life's mission in your simple Aveda, even though you don't have those high miles that Chassidim from other generations have. And this is a common theme. We shouldn't be surprised if the Rebbe's Mamarim. Just when you learn the Rebbe's Mamarim, you have to be aware of it, and you have to look for it in the Rebbe's Mamarim. And this next Mamarim that we're going to learn is very explicit. The Rebbe addresses this very explicitly. The preciousness of our Aveda as simple people, how precious it is on many different levels. So this Maimer, in a way, is a continuation of last Maimer, because from the perspective of Aveda, what does it mean to us in Aveda? It's the same story. It's a story to us people living next to the Mashiach Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, Moshe Anov Mikol Adam Ashal Pnei HaAdama. So I think it's a Gemara. If not, it's a Medish. Asks, what's this? What's the significance of Adama over here? So it says Adama is referring to the lowest generation, the earth. It's all the way on the bottom, what people step on, what seems like valueless. Everybody has it. There's nothing special in it. Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moshe Rabbeinu saw the Adama, the lowest generation ever, which is our generation, when he saw that, he was overcome by a feeling of humility in the face of our Aveda. And this the Rebbe is explaining to us how our Aveda shouldn't be just a dry Kabbalah soil. Our Aveda should be full of life. So let's see which Nekudas the Rebbe teaches us in this Maimer about this. In a Maimer Roni v'Simchi bas Tzion. So first of all, it's interesting the date of this Maimer. It's very relevant to the days that we are in. The date of this Maimer is Tesvav Sivan. What's Tesvav Sivan? It's not such a famous date. It's the date that the Fidik Rebbe was arrested. And if you look in the star of the Pesach Davar of the Maimer, it says this is the day when the Fidik Rebbe's arrest began. It says, look at the Rebbe writes in his Maimer that after the redemption of the Fidik Rebbe, where we saw that the Fidik Rebbe had his victory, so now we see that the whole arrest, in other words, including the day of Tesvav Sivan, was a very special day. It was the Zriya, it was the planting the seeds of the victory. So the Rebbe takes everything. It's like a Mashiach to cook. What's going to be when Mashiach comes? The whole world is going to be full of the Eibishter himself. By the Rebbe, everything that happens in the world, even a situation of arrest, is a story of Kedusha increasing and having its victory in the world. So the Rebbe made a big deal out of Tesvav Sivan and had a Maimer published in honor of Tesvav Sivan. It's also very, very relevant to literally the days that we're living in now, because the Frierdiker Rebbe famously, the Rebbe spoke many times in basic Gimel Tammuz that what was in the arrest warrant, what was the accusation against the Frierdiker Rebbe, that he takes school children, young school children who haven't had yet an opportunity to form their own opinion about life, about the truths of reality, and about what they want to do with their life. And he takes them and he indoctrinates them in a way of Torah mitzvahs from the youngest age, before they had a chance to make an independent choice. In other words, traditional Jewish chinuch that we've been doing for 3,500 years. And as everybody is aware, right now there's a gzeira. And this gzeira is not only against Yiddish chinuch. It's very important that we all understand this. The Frierdiker Rebbe in the Maimer V'Kibel HaYehudim, which the Rebbe bases V'ata Tetzava on, the Frierdiker Rebbe points out that throughout history, when our enemies, when the enemies of Yiddishkeit tried to destroy Yiddishkeit, they always went after the Yiddish children. I'm not sure what exactly the Frierdiker Rebbe mentions in the Maimer, I don't remember, but if we think ourselves right here, we could think very quickly. In Mitzrayim, Pari threw the children into the Nilus. By Haman said, "Eini maskil elamin hatinaikis." When I start by Gzeira, I'm going to start from the children. I think he even said, "Imein gedim, imein tiyashim." If there's no young goats, what do you call them? You kill the baby, so there's no adults. It's a Gzeira against Yiddishkeit. It's a Tzedek when the Haskalah movement, right, the Jewish Enlightenment movement, when they influenced the Russian government and the ministers in the Russian government to put out a decree that all of the teachers in the Jewish schools and all of their Rabbanim also must be certified in a university. In other words, they wanted to take them into a secular university, teach them kfira, expose them to kfira, and like this diminish a little bit from the years Shemaim, and like this take away the children. So the Tzaddik went on Mesiras Nefesh against it. He didn't speak about it in terms of a fight for our chinuch. It was a fight for Yiddishkeit itself. Shimon HaKefer, the famous maskil, his main work was he would convince parents to send children to the schools of Haskalah. So the decrees, our enemies, the tyrants who have stood up against Yiddishkeit have always started from the children. And it's the same thing now with these people. The Avsexia did the same thing. The Frierdiker Rebbe was talking, the Maimer V'Kibel HaYehudim. But they went after the children. The Frierdiker Rebbe explained that this is the foundation of the Jewish nation, and it's a gzeira against Yiddishkeit itself. So what's happening now, Mitzvah Hashem, we'll find out, it's the times of Mashiach. It only looks begillah like it's a nishan, it's going to be bottle. But this Maimer, which is in honor and bringing out the greatness of the day of the arrest of the Frierdiker Rebbe, which was for Jewish chinuch, which is really the essence of Yiddishkeit, the key, the sustainment of Yiddishkeit, is really connected to our times, and hopefully us learning the Maimer will have the impact that it needs to be mevatel this gzeira. So let's start the Maimer. Roni v'simchi bas Tzion. This is the Navi Zechariah after describing the nevuah of the Geula. So he says, "Rejoice and be happy, bas Tzion, the daughter of Tzion." It's actually it's a nice pasuk. The Abarbanel says on the pasuk, "Roni v'simchi bas Tzion." Why should you be happy? Because over here Zechariah is talking about the Geula HaSiddur. He's talking about not the Geula of the base Bayis Sheni. He says in Bayis Sheni, your Geula was through Daryavish or through Kairish. It was through human beings. It was through kings. And you didn't have the full Gili of Nevuah. Nevuah didn't return. However, when Mashiach is going to come, Roni v'simchi bas Tzion, there will be cause to be happy. I myself, the Eibishter, says that I myself will come and redeem you, and you will again have the full Gili HaShechina.
Yes,
where do you see that?
Yes.
Reish Pegimel, yeah. Roni v'simchi. Yeah. So the Zechariah says to the Yidden, Roni v'simchi bas Tzion, that the Yidden should be happy and rejoice in the time when Mashiach is going to come. The Alter Rebbe asks, when they get to this pasuk, the pasuk L'chura, he should have started the Haftarah of Shabbos Chanukah not with this pasuk. We read this pasuk in the Haftarah of Shabbos Chanukah. Why? Because like a good 10, 15 psukim later, B'chlam, a different Perek, it says a different pasuk. The Haftarah you always read, the Chachamim were Masakin, you read it to Minyan Diyema. It has to do to the events of the week that the parsha is being read in. So the reason why we're reading this Haftarah is because of this pasuk. He sees in his nevuah a golden menorah. That's why we read it around the time of Chanukah, Shabbos Chanukah. So the Alter Rebbe asks the question of Lama Maschilin Berani V'Simchi Bas Tzion. If that's why we're reading the Haftarah, so start with that pasuk. Why do we begin with the pasuk Roni v'simchi bas Tzion, which has nothing to do with Hanukkah? And the Alter Rebbe explains over there the connection of this pasuk Roni v'simchi bas Tzion to Hanukkah is ki bas Tzion koi al Knesset Yisrael bizman hagolus. Bas Tzion, the daughter of Tzion, is a reference to the Yidden when they're at the time of Galus. In other words, you have the Yidden the way they are in the Madrega of Geula when they're in an uplifted state. And then they're not called Bas Tzion, they're Tzion. When are they called Bas Tzion, the daughter of Tzion? This is in the time of Galus. So in the time, this pasuk is talking about the time of Galus, in other words, that the Navi is telling the Yidden, Bas Tzion, when Mashiach comes, you should be happy. In the time of Galus, are called Bas Tzion. So that's why we read this pasuk around the time of Hanukkah. I read very quickly in Torah. It seems like what the Alter Rebbe is explaining is because Hanukkah, you light the menorah bachutz. In other words, you descend into the world of Klippus, into the world of Rishus Harabim. So it's a situation of Golus. The idea of Hanukkah is a Yid when he has to light do his mitzvahs in a situation of Golus when he's in Rishus Harabim. So therefore, we call the Yidden at that time Bas Tzion. Okay. So the Rebbe asks the Diuk Kanal. This question, who gam ba'afteira the Shabbos Parshas Ba'aleisa. We can ask the same question also when you get to the Parsha and the Hafteira of Shabbos Parshas Ba'aleisa. The Shabbos Parshas Ba'aleisa, which we're going to reach soon, is always very soon after Shavuos. And Ba'aleisa is Haneris when you light the Menorah. So it's talking about a Menorah again. And therefore, we read this Hafteira also because of the pasuk. I see that there's a golden menorah. And we can have the same question that the Alter Rebbe had b'negea to Chanukah. We can have b'negea to the Hafteira and the Haleischa. However, we can't use the answer of the Alter Rebbe that Chanukah, the menorah, is outside. It's in of Galus. We can't use that answer because Shavuos is in of Chedes. Matan Torah is the inning of Cheres, is the inning of freedom. If I'm not mistaken, the Rebbe speaks once in a Sikha about the inning that you would think that what's the Cheres, what's the freedom of Yidden is Mitzrayim. We left Mitzrayim, we left Golus. So now we're a free nation. Says the Rebbe, if you have such a freedom, you're not a free person at all. What did the Eibishter tell Moshe Rabbeinu? When will you have freedom? Dafka, when you come to Har Sinai and take the Torah and serve the Eibshter, now you'll be free. Otherwise, so you're not a slave to Pari, you're a slave to yourself. You're a slave to your own limited ideas, your own narcissism, your own problems, your own character issues. You connect to Torah, now you're connecting to the Eibshter, to the Ein Sof. Now you have Cheres. Nevertheless, even though Shavuos is the idea of freedom, and we read the Haftarah and Shabbos Parshas Ba'aleischa right after Shavuos. So now the Yidden are in a madrega of freedom not to go. Nevertheless, also in this Haftarah, we title the Yidden the daughter of Tzion, that they're in a low madrega. They're only the daughter of Tzion. So everyone wants to understand why. The Chur of the Yidden are now in a madrega of Tzion. It's possible that David might have in the other room.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. V'hinei b'teira some dibla maskulani v'simchi harishin, and another mimer on the pasuk Roni v'simchi. The Alter Rebbe says as follows: Mekasher pasuk Roni v'simchi bastin in mimer hamedish. He connects the pasuk of Roni v'simchi bastin with the medish on the pasuk to end or the end of Bnei Tzion. B'melech shleimet ba'atara shiter le'imoy shleimet melech is saying in Shir Hashirim. That Tzion or the end of Bnei Tzion, daughters of Tzion. In other words, the daughters of Yerushalayim. Tzion is also a title for Yerushalayim. So Shlomo Melech's kingdom was in Yerushalayim. So he's saying, daughters of Tzion, go out and see the crown that Shlomo's mother crowned him with. The crown that Shlomo Melech's mother crowned him with. The Medrash asks, we don't find that Shlomo Melech's mother ever made him a crown. So what's this idea, the crown that that his mother crowned him with? So the Medrash teaches the pasuk Bnei Tzion is referring to the Yidden. Shlomo HaMelech is the Eibishter. Shalom Shalei, the Eibishter is called by the name of Shalom, and Shlomo from the lashon of Shalom. So we're talking over here about the Yidden and Shlomo, and then you have the Eibishter, and then you have the crown that the Eibishter's mother Kivyachal gave him. So he says in the Medrash, Mashal Lamelech, it's a mashal for a king who had a Bas Yechida, he had an only daughter and he loved her very much. And Leizaz Michabav Ad Shekra Biti. He didn't move from his feeling of love to her. In other words, he was so captured in this feeling of love to his only daughter, it's a Bas Yechida, that he would call her Biti, my daughter. It's a shtickle ashver lashon. That's what the Rebbe says that this is the lashon that the Alter Rebbe uses, and in several other places. There's other lashonos that say kra biti, but over here it sounds like the very act of calling her a daughter brings out the love. In other words, when somebody has a child and he calls him, what are you, my child, my son? So it brings out the love. So even that's already an expression of love. And then however, this didn't satisfy the king, and he went even further in his love to his daughter, and he called her he called her my sister. And he went even further. He didn't move from his love to his daughter until he actually called her his mother. That's how great his love to his daughter was. The Medrash says over there that so too the Eibishter calls the Yidden his daughter, and then he calls the Yidden his sister, and then he even calls the Yidden his mother. As I state in Medrash. Alter Rebbe explains the Gimel in Yanim Ele Biti Achesimi Ba'Avedas Adam. These three in Yanim of a daughter, a sister, and a mother in Avedas Adam in a Yid service to the Eibishter Him Kiyum HaMitzvahs. This is a Yid when he's at the level of fulfilling the Eibishter's mitzvahs, but he's not on a higher level. Then you have a Yid, and that's Biti. Then you have Esak HaTeira, a Yid who's on the level of the study of Teira, which is a higher madrega than Kim Mitzvahs, which has to do just with the level of action. Teira is already has to do with the Keches Pnimim of the person, his Seichel. And then the third madrega, Imi, when did the Yidden stand in the madrega of a mother? Va'aveda de Mesiras Nefesh. That's when Yidden are in the madrega of Mesiras Nefesh. In other words, they've reached higher than Teira, higher than Seichel. They now reach the essence of their soul. That's when Yidden are called Imi. So in other words, Bas represents somebody who's lower than you. It's your daughter. It's lower, somebody who's lower than the mother or the father. And then Aches is a colleague, is somebody who's on the same level as a sibling, two brothers there in the same generation. And then Imi is somebody who stands above you. Back for me. That's okay. Say that. Okay.
They want to connect with.
To be kiyum a mitzvah, says the Alter Rebbe, when Yidden do mitzvahs, ha'adam ha'mekayim a mitzvah b'chinas mekabel. When Yid fulfills mitzvahs, so he's in the level of a receiver. In other words, he needs to receive from levels that are higher than him because he's on a low level. He receives within him the amshacha that is accomplished through his fulfillment of the mitzvahs. What happens when the Yid studies Teira? Then Nasim Yisrael Achim V'Reim LaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Yidden become brothers and colleagues to the Eibishter, and that's why they're in the Medega of Achis. So when a Yid is learning Teira, he's an equal Kivyachal with the Eibishter, and even furthermore, Validei Haved de Mesiras Nefesh Nikraim B'Shem Imi. When a Yid reaches the Madrega of Mesiras Nefesh, he does the Aved of Mesiras Nefesh. Then he reaches the level of a mother. In other words, he's above Shehei Mashpim Kivyachal V'Akadosh Baruch. He's Mashpia Kivyachal in the Eibishter. We can connect this with what's explained in several places. On this medrash, that the mother Shlomo Melech made him a crown. When did this happen? The Yidden crowned the Eibishter by first saying Nasa and then saying Nishma, like we all hear from all of our kids, or Einiklach. They come home from school, they're all proud to tell us the story of the Yidden. They're so proud of themselves. That when the Eibishter wanted to give the Torah, so first he went to this nation and they asked, what does it say in Torah? It says you can't steal. He went to another nation and they said, what does it say in Torah? Do you want the Torah? They asked, what does it say? They said, family life has to be pure. And so too, he went to all the other nations and they asked, what does it say? And they said, not. And we said, Nasav and Nishma. Yeah, that's what we hear from our kids. They're so proud of it. So this idea of Nasav and Nishma, when the Yidden did that, then they crowned the Eibishter with the crown. Because this idea of first saying Nasa and then saying Nishma is related to the idea of Mesiras Nefesh. Okay, I'll go upon it. Shleimar, the Rebbe says, one of the reasons why we learn Parshas Bahal Leischa after the Yom Tov of Shavuos is because candles refer to the Yiddish and Neshamas, like it says in the pasuk, Neid Havaya Nishmas Adam. That the neshama of a person, the neshama of a yid, is a candle of the Eibishter. He's medayik in the pasuk, the pirush Nei Havaya. It's a candle of Havaya. What does that mean? What is Havaya's candle? What brings light to Havaya? The Ner, the neshama, the yid. We find the source for this in the Medrash on this pasuk, that it says that the Yidden give light to the one who gives light to the whole world. In other words, who's the one who gives light to the whole world? The Eibishter. And the Yidden bring light to the Eibishter. So it says that the Yidden are mashpiyah kivyochel in the Eibishter. And this concept is connected to Shavuos, when the Yidden crown the Eibishter, which is also the idea that the Yidden are mashpiyah in the Eibishter, like the Medrash said, that the Eibishter calls the Yidden his mother, they give him. So according to this, we strengthened our question even more. Why then is the Haftarah of Shabbos Parshas Bahal Leischa Roni B'Simchi Bas Tzion? We call the Yidden a bas, a daughter. They're on a low level. L'chor of the Yidden and Shavuos are standing on the highest level. They're standing in the level of Mesiras Nefesh, where they're actually mashpia in the Eibishter. Okay, so until now we have the questions of the Rebbe and the Maimer. The Nekuda of the Rebbe and the Maimer, or the beginning of the Nekuda of the Rebbe and the Maimer, is coming here in Gimel. Just debating if we should pause here or we should continue. Should we do? What does the Elam say? Should we do another 15 minutes, or is it already very late at night? So take this. Should we do another 15 minutes? What is the Elam think? Okay. So Zebed says like this. The Inyan who, so to explain this idea, why are the Yidden, when they're standing in the high Madrega of Shavuos, which is the Madrega of Mesiras Nefesh, which is the idea of the Yidden being Mashpiyah and the Eibishter, why in that situation are they called Bas Tzion, the lowest Madrega? Zebed says like this, what is drawn down from Kedusha through fulfilling the mitzvahs, which this is the idea of Biti, is a greater hamshacha than what is brought down, than what is drawn down through the Aveda of Achaysi Ve'imi. In other words, what Rebbe is saying over here is that that's counter. It's the opposite of what you would think. If you're going to talk about the Madrega of the Yidden, when is the Yidden the highest Madrega? When he's in the Madrega of Imi. The next one down is Achaysi. The Yid's Madrega, where he is as a person, as a level that he reached, his lowest level is Biti. But how about when is he mamshich the most? When does he draw down the greatest amount of Kedusha into this world? So then the Rebbe says, Dafka Biti. Dafka, the lowest Aveda of Biti, that brings about the greatest Hamshacha into this world. What's the explanation? The Rebbe is going to tell us. Ki Aveda de Mesiras Nefesh Imi. The Aveda of Mesiras Nefesh, which this is called Imi. So too the Aveda of the study of Torah, which this is Achaisi. It's a spiritual Aveda. When somebody is learning Torah, he's learning in his head. It's an intellectual thing that he's doing. He's understanding in his mind the Eibishter's Torah. So it's a spiritual thing. It's in his mind. It's not physical. And certainly, the Aveda of Mesiras Nefesh, where the person brings out the depths of his soul, the core of his soul, the essence of his soul, and he gives it over. He dedicates his entire will. Mesiras Nefesh is also Lashon Mesiras Haratzon. Nefesh is another word for Ratzon. He gives over his entire will to the Eibishter, and if necessary, even Mesiras Nefesh b'Poel Mamish. So these are all spiritual Avedas. We're talking over here about a person doing a spiritual work, a spiritual service to the Eibishter, either by studying Torah or dedicating his soul to the Eibishter, his will to the Eibishter. And since it's a spiritual service, therefore it has some relation to the hamshacha, to the holiness that's drawn down through the Aveda. Because they're both spiritual. וכיוון שהמשחש על דעבד דאחייסי ואימי כמסרוסה דלאלה שמסררת נמשחס על דסוסה דלסata. Since this Aveda of Achesi and Imi is an Asarusa de Le'ela, is a Hamshacha that comes from above, from the higher worlds. Why? Because the Aveda of the Yid down here reached up. It's a spiritual Aveda. A spiritual Aveda reaches and touches the spiritual worlds. So his Aveda reached up into the spiritual worlds. It awakened a certain Hamshacha, this is Asarusa de Le'ela, and it drew down the Kedusha as a result of his work. But what's the bottom line from all of this? How much holiness can be drawn down? Only as high as the person's Aveda can reach. The Hamshacha, the holiness that's drawn down through Mesiras Nefesh and through Torah, is proportionate to how high the person's Aveda was. And we all understand that a person, even if he reaches the highest level that a human being can possibly reach, even the Madrega of a Tzaddik Gomer, is still a very limited Madrega compared to the Eibishter himself. So even if we were to reach the highest Madrega of Achaisi and even higher Mesiras Nefesh of Imi, we would taka be in a higher level. But what we draw down would be limited compared to mitzvahs. Why? Because with mitzvahs, it's a different system. The holiness that's drawn down through doing mitzvahs, the physical action of doing mitzvahs, a mitzvah is an activity in this physical world that has no relationship whatsoever with spirituality. You do a mitzvah, what are you doing? You take the leather, the hide of an animal, you work it into leather, so it's a physical thing. You take physical ink and make batim out of it and physically wrap it on a physical body. It's all physical. It's not a spiritual Aveda. It's not a spiritual Aveda. So why then does it draw down something from the upper worlds? How can something that we do down here in the physical world have any effect and cause anything in the spiritual world to change? Why should it? It's like saying when you turn the speaker on, so the speaker said, now the room is going to become light. Ma'akesha. A speaker produces sound waves. If you want light, you need a light bulb. A light bulb produces light waves. How are you going to get from a speaker that's going to turn into light? It can't happen. So how's it possible that when we do mitzvahs in this physical world, we bring down Kedusha? Rebbe says, it's the Eibishter was Gezer. It's an Esirusa de Le'ela on its own. The Eibishter decreed that when you take these physical tefillin and wrap them on a physical arm, down here in a physical world, and so to the bottom of Reish Pei Dalet, and so too when you shake a lulav and esrog, and sit down and have a meal in a sukkah, all physical things, you make kiddush on physical wine. When you do these things, the Eibishter said, holiness will come down into the world. So now, what level is the holiness dependent on? On who is this holiness being drawn down dependent on? It's not dependent on me. It's dependent on the Eibishter. The Eibishter said that when this is done, holiness will come down. How much holiness could come down? As much holiness as the Eibishter. Therefore, what the holiness that's drawn down is from the Atzmus of the Eibishter himself. Because it's not limited by me. When I do my Aveda, when I do my spiritual Aveda, the holiness that is being drawn down is limited by me. And even if I'm a tzaddik gomer, completely got rid of my yeshes, completely even bottled the mitzvahs, which is a madrega that only the greatest tzaddikim are able to accomplish. It's pashat, not human. Even if you do that, you're still a limited creation. And therefore, you cannot draw down so much kedusha. A mitzvah, you did the mitzvah, it's not being drawn down directly as a result of your action. It's not like you're holding a string and you're pulling the holiness down because it's a physical action. It can't touch the spiritual worlds. It's coming down because that's what the Eibishter said. So now it comes down like the Eibishter wants it to come down. It comes down from the essence of the Eibishter. So it turns out that dafke us, we'll get to the dafke in a moment, but it turns out that the Aveda that we do with physical mitzvahs actually draws down a much greater level of Kedusha than any Aveda that's in the highest level that a person could possibly find himself. Roni v'simchi bas Tzion. And this is why the pasuk continues after saying, rejoice and be happy, bas Tzion. Why should bas Tzion be happy? The daughter of Tzion, you're a daughter of Tzion. Why should you be happy? I myself will come. When you're at Bas Tzion, when you do mitzvahs, then I myself, the essence of the Eibishter will come. Two concepts are hinted in these words. First of all, don't worry about it. Don't worry if your Aveda is only on the level of action. It seems to be a low level of Aveda. Don't worry about it. I, the Eibishter, will take care of it, and I will come down. And Ba, Ani Ba'atzmi. There's no title over here for the Eibishter. Ba, I'm coming. Who's coming? I'm coming. The Eibishter himself is coming. Kivyachal Ein Sof Baruch Hu Mamish. The Eibishter himself Mamish. So here we have the first point, that when we do an Aveda on the level of mitzvahs, we should know, the first one, we're accomplishing. We're accomplishing drawing down the highest levels of Kedusha, including from Atzmus Ein Sof himself. Then you're going to think that there was going to leave us here to think that, okay, Taka, we bring down a very high Hamshacha from the Eibishter, from Atzmus Ein Sof, but what are we? We still have nothing to be proud of ourselves about. We still have nothing to be happy of ourselves. Of course, when we say proud of ourselves, we don't mean to say an egotistical, klippedick pride. We mean to say a Gain Yaakov, about Jewish pride. So I have nothing to be happy about. So of course, the Rebbe doesn't leave us with that. Chas v'shalom, that the Rebbe should leave us with that and say that you are on the lowest level. But be happy that at least you're serving a great purpose. You're serving the greatest purpose. The Rebbe doesn't leave it like that. Chas v'shalom. The Rebbe talks to us also on who we are. V'yeshleisif, on our madrega. Shahamayla da ha'aveda de biti ala haveda da achesi v'imi higam benegela ha'adam ha'evid. The Maila, the advantage, the greatness of the Aveda of Biti, compared to the higher levels of Aveda, of Achesi Animi, also pertain, they also apply to the person who does the Aveda. That in the person himself, there's also a Maila when he does this Aveda. Sheba Aveda da Achesi v'imi. What's this Maila? When a person does the Aveda of Achesi Animi, he's reached big madregas, he's become somebody special. So nigish bedakas mitziyusei shel adam ha'evid. He's felt a little bit. There's no avoiding it. Here's a yid.
I am doing something good.
It's not just that I'm doing something good. When zet der mensch, it's if there's a person who, when he says Heidul Hashem ki tov, his heart is flaming with fire. Heidul Hashem ki tov. You can't not feel that. You can't not feel it. If I was watching it, I would be completely bottled to this person. And the person himself can't not feel. If there's something there, if there's anything special, it will be felt. It's from the limitations of a person. As much as the person doesn't want to feel himself, if there's something there, if there's a greatness there, the greatness will be felt, even though bedakas, because we're talking over here about a very derhei ben yid. But the greatness will be felt. So there's a problem. It's an impossibility. If you want to have greatness in Aveda, know that something is going to hurt. What's going to hurt is that the greatness is going to be felt. And that's going to disturb the bittul. Bittul is going to be disturbed by that. He feels the greatness of his Aveda. And David says in two ways. Sai, he feels the greatness, Pashat, it's a tremendous accomplishment that he's doing. These are very great Avedas. And also, so he also feels the greatness of what's accomplished through his Aveda. He feels this, that he becomes a brother to the Eibishter. He's even mashpi, he even gives to the Eibishter Kiviyachal. So a Metzias is felt, even though it might only be bedakas. However, ba'aveda debiti, what about a person who has no madrega? He's a Kabbalah's oilnik. He does mitzvahs because he forces himself to do mitzvahs. It's not filt garnished. You tell him, here you have the chance to shake lulav and esig, and you tell him about shaking lulav and esig, you're mamshich the hamshachas for the whole world, and you're doing it in the sukkah noch. This is seviv, hamshachas seviv in the pnimi. And you tell him, and here is epis, good meat with wine. You ask him, which one do you want more? Not which one are you going to force yourself to do more. Not which one are you going to give up your life for, but which one do you want more? Which one is pulling you more? Most people in our times are going to say, the meat is pulling me more. Narvas, I have Kabbalah's oil, and by me, I'll give up my life for that, even though I don't feel it inside me. So this is the type of person we're dealing with. He has no madrega. He's a nobody. He has nothing. You have nothing. So you're bottled. Over here, he feels that I'm nobody. I'm nothing important. I'm nothing special. He's bottled to the Eibishter. Hein b'negei la'aveda atzma. Sai, the Aveda itself is a bittul dik Aveda. Shekol Avedasa hirak l'kim tziva HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's only doing it not because he appreciates the greatness of the Eibishter, not because he feels the love of the Eibishter in his heart. He's doing it only because the Eibishter said, so I do. That's it. And so too, what's drawn down from his Aveda, there also he doesn't feel any greatness. How could I feel great? Now tell me, you did the mitzvah of Lulav and Esrog, you should know that you just brought down a new light that from Sheshis Yimei Bereishis was never drawn down into this world. And not only that, you should know all of the Goyim with all of their Chachmas. You could take it back to the Greeks and then the Romans and then the Enlightenment, all of their tens of thousands of wise people. And all of the civilizations and societies that they built, you should know, did not bring down nothing of the Kedusha that your simple action of shaking Lulav and Esrog brought down. So could you imagine what he accomplished over here? What the smartest people in the world for thousands of generations have done, by him shaking Lulav and Esrog, he just accomplished more than that. But could he feel proud of himself? All he did was he just shook a Lulav and Esrog. There's no room over here for a friend to. Melee, he went, he conquered, he climbed Mount Everest, he put himself in shape for a few months, and then he stopped at the base camp, he acclimated himself, he got his oxygen, and then he went, and he was smart, and he knew how to use his tools and his equipment, and he hired the right guides. Did a big accomplishment. He reached the top of Mount Everest. He didn't even use oxygen. Over there, he feels Epesazeh, but over here, what did you do? You did nothing. You took a Lulav and Esrog, you made a bracha, you shook it. You just now accomplished more than the whole world ever had before until this point in history. But I can't feel good with it. I can't give myself credit for it. So the Eibishter said that when I shake a Lulav and Esrog, this tremendous thing is going to happen. So I maintain my bittul because I didn't become nobody because of this. So notwithstanding the fact that I just was mamshich from Atzmas Ein Sof, it still doesn't take away bittul because all I did was to shake the Lulav and Esrog. It's not because it didn't come because of his tremendous accomplishment and greatness. The reason why he drew down from Atzmas is because the mitzvahs come from Atzmas, and that's why Atzmas was drawn down. So here's the second point that the Rebbe tells us. You should know that nobody in our generation should look down on himself and say that even though I can bring down tremendous holiness into this world, but me myself have reached nowhere. I'm not somebody that I myself should be proud of. Not in an egotistical way, but just somebody should have a joy in life and see himself as important as having made the Eibishter proud, made the Rebbe proud. You should never look at yourself that way. Because the Rebbe is saying is that no, that because you have this simple dedication to the Eibishter and you do what he says, this is bittul. You're bottled to the Eibishter. And you've reached in bittul what nobody in the previous generations were able to. Nobody. If you think about the statement, there's Reb Hillel Parcher. I'm going to start off Chas V'Shalom with any Yidden. There was Reb Hillel Parcher, there was Isaac Homler, there was Binyamin Kletzker, all the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. They were certainly at the Madrega of Teira and at the Madrega of Mesiras Nefesh. I mean, Reb Hillel Parcher was a tzaddik, a halber Rebbe. The Rebbe is saying over here, though, is that in the sense of bittul, in a way, that's the pashut, the way I understand the Maimon. The Rebbe is saying is that in the sense of bittul, we actually have a greater bittul than them. So it sounds like chutzpah to say it. I think I'm faithfully translating what the Rebbe is saying in pashut Averta that we can understand. In the sense of bittul, we actually are greater than them because they did something important and great. And the greatness of the thing that they did, no matter how much they didn't want to feel it, no matter how much they chased away any feeling of ego, they've worked on their ego incomparably more than us. I've never worked on my ego. They've worked on their ego their whole life. But still, because they did something great, so Bedakus, a Metzias was left. Mashiach came by us, since there is nothing, there just is nothing. So we're completely bottled to the Eibishter. And with this bittul, the Rebbe makes the final point over here. So now it's not only about the person himself, about how I should view myself and how I should feel about myself when I wake up in the morning. Know also what kind of holiness you carry within you. Shlema says the Rebbe, this is really
what kind of holiness?
Holiness.
Oh, holiness.
Holiness you carry with you because of this.
Holiness, yeah.
The Rebbe says like this. This is what the Rebbe is saying now. Dalidei habitul, because I am batul, so hu nasa klila ha'esh nimshach alidei hamitzvahs. Now, the holiness that's drawn down into this world can actually rest within me. It's not pshat that I brought down holiness into the world somewhere. When Mashiach is going to come, we're going to see this holiness. But to me, it has no connection because I'm a lowly person. I haven't reached any madregas. I haven't gotten anywhere. I don't feel a love to the Eibishter in my heart. So therefore, I have nothing in me. Says the Rebbe, you should know because you're batel and you did a mitzvah with this bittul. Now, when you do a mitzvah, know what's resting in you. Know what kind of holiness is resting in you. The holiness of the mitzvah itself. In other words, the atzmos that was drawn down through the mitzvahs, it finds a place, it looks at you, and it says, can I be here or not? It says, yes, I can be here, because here is somebody who's batel, and he's not a shter. He doesn't push away the atzmos of the Eibishter. He's open. He put himself aside, and now he's a vessel to receive within him the essence of the Eibishter himself. And that's the end of the pasuk. That the Eibishter says, I dwell within you, simple yid, who does the mitzvahs without any specialness, without any fanfare, without any greatness. And you do the mitzvah, this amshach of atzmus, ani ba'atzm kivyachol, he b'seichech b'pnimius, rests within you in a pnimiustic way.
Shkeach.
Shkeach.
Beautiful. So it's not a plain person, just real you.
Right.
Regardless of